Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, moderator for today's event, and I welcome you. As always, we have a great webinar on tap. I'm really excited about this one. I think it's going to be a great conversation. But before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items we need to go over. First of all, today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of the event, you will have the opportunity to access it later on demand. And we are taking questions from the audience, so if at any time during today's conversation you have a question for either of our speakers, please don't wait, don't hesitate, just use the question and answer tab there on your interface and submit your questions, and we'll try to get to as many as we can near the end of today's webinar. We also have that very interactive chat feature, so we do encourage you to take part in the conversation. Just chat out your comments, suggestions, whatever you want to share with us. We'll be more than happy to take a look at your comments and hopefully maybe even incorporate them into the conversation. And then at the end of today's webinar, we are going to be doing a drawing for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So please stick around. Hopefully you'll be one of our 4 lucky winners. We also do have a polling question during today's presentation, so please be on the lookout for that one as well. All right, with that, let's go ahead and kick off today's webinar, which is using value stream management to evolve release management for DevOps. Our speakers today are Jeffrey Keyes, who is the VP of Product Marketing over at Platora. Oh, you got a new title, VP of Product Marketing and Strategy, huh? Good for you, Jeff. Congratulations. And then we also have Steve Pereira, who is the CEO of Visible. Welcome to you both. It's great to see you.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
You're welcome. Well, I'm going to put myself on mute, take myself off camera as always. I'll see you guys on the flip side. Enjoy your presentation.
Awesome. Thanks, Charlene. You know, I love this topic. If you haven't heard Steve before, Steve, thanks for being here. This is great. When I first met you, I remember looking you up on LinkedIn. It was like, oh, the value stream guy. I'm like, wow, what? You know, that was pretty cool. Because it was this moment of, you know, somebody that's focused on flow efficiency and what's that mean? But what I think most people don't know is how'd you get here? What was before? You know, I remember reading something that you were a release manager one day. What?
I've taken quite the wandering path to where I am now. And it's it actually started in tech support. So, well, it depends how far you go back. I was breaking and fixing computers like as a pretty young kid. But yeah, tech support kind of got me into the tech world. But then I moved into release management at a very small software company. Back when I was printing out manuals, burning CDs, putting them in an envelope and literally shipping them to customers on a semi-regular basis. The semi-regular basis was, I believe, every 6 months. So we've come a long way from there. But I've been involved in release management ever since, really, just at larger and larger scales and higher complexity.
And then out of that journey, if you've ever had to reburn a CD, because somebody put the wrong component up, boy, you start to rethink. I remember having that conversation. Sorry, I'm way off track, but this is just fun. I remember we were shipping Office 11, and the conversation went to, what will the price of this bug be? And at the point in time, we're just getting ready to start burning CDs. And at that point, it was like every day that we go past the initial burn day is $1 million a day, because we'll have to recall all those, start all over, and then there's delays. I mean, it's just crazy. So yes, a lot of importance in the process of release, which brings us to this conversation today. What are we going to talk about? We'll run through the release management flow, managing complexity and friction. Oh, I love how this thing all lined up. All of our graphics got it. Anyways, something called avoiding death by 1,000 shoulder taps. How do we evolve our orchestration and really drive into data-driven release management? And what, maybe another word for that. So I'm kind of excited about this. So using that, what does it take to deliver more value? Talk us through this.
I think that where we're headed, based on where we started, like I think about my journey and this shipping physical software artifacts every 6 months, you just had a giant batch of change that would take so long from when you figured you had something of value, you had your expected value, to when you got your realization of that value, was a super long feedback loop, right? And so I think your ability to then process that feedback is super limited, and you have this huge distance between here's a bet we're going to make and here's the outcome of that bet, and then adjusting as a result of that outcome is just makes it really hard to make those judgment calls about, like, we think this is going to be really valuable, and this is something we want to build because we heard from customers that they either didn't like what we did last, or they're excited about a new thing. The faster that feedback loop, the faster you are at shipping, really gives you the ability to deliver more value, because you're able to incorporate that feedback from customers. And that's the only thing that matters when it comes to value. It's what your customers are telling you they care about.
Right. When I was thinking about the slides as we were putting them together, I remember thinking, well, this seems like motherhood and apple pie. Of course, duh. Doesn't everybody believe that? And the challenge is, so many in the release management world, your job is not necessarily to deliver more value. It's, make sure production doesn't get blowed up. Make sure that bad things don't happen. Because somebody really scary is going to be in your office breathing down your neck. You'll be wasting money. You'll be wasting time. You'll have egg on your face, because if it went wrong, of course it's your fault. So, tell me how does this relate to Steve changing from being a release manager to being, a value stream manager?
Yeah, well, what you just made me think of is kind of this, you have this fear, and then you have opportunity on the other end, right? And you can follow this kind of scarcity mindset of, we have to minimize risk and we can't take chances because things are going to blow up and people are going to point fingers, and we'll be worse off if we have negative consequences from sticking our neck out. But you can also switch that mindset towards abundance and say, there's unlimited value that we can deliver, as long as we understand what our customers want and we have the ability to deliver change to them. And you can really lean in that direction and start thinking more about, like, what is the upside of this? Let's stop worrying about the downside, and worry more about the upside of what's possible and enabling what's possible. So I think when we think about value streams and flow and continuous delivery, we're leaning in the direction of, let's maximize the amount of feedback that we can generate. Let's maximize the speed at which we can deliver change and get that feedback from customers. And so it kind of maybe requires us to step a little bit outside of what we're used to or our comfort zone, but ultimately the upside is huge. And we've seen that across the industry.
Absolutely. So moving along, and if you're not on the public chat, you ought to. I'm in Seattle. Steve, you're in Toronto.
Toronto.
Look at that. See, I'm getting it right. So I'm seeing some notes from Idaho, from France, from Holland, Italy. Welcome, but love to hear where you're from. Join New Mexico, New York City. This is great. We're going to dive into it. So some of the things that are impacting this, and I'm curious how much folks are experiencing this, but there's a transition from project to product. And what does that mean for release? And I'd love to hear what it means from you folks that are listening in as well. I think the latest stat said that 90% of companies are experiencing this organizational change. What's your take? What's this mean?
Yeah, I think that if we think back to my releases every 6 months, the amount that you had to kind of batch into that to make sure that you got it in before the deadline, you got it in before the code freeze, the testing phase, it just provided a lot of stress and uncertainty around what's going to fit, what's going to be done in time. How do we make sure that we hit the deadline? So you had this, and of course, we know Parkinson's law. It's like you're just going to take as much time as you have. And so what happens is you kind of, while you're uncertain in the initial phases of a release, you're going to be experimenting with things, trying things, and your work's really going to kind of trickle out. And then you approach your deadline and everything gets crammed in and people are stressed and running around, and you've got to go bug people to get their work in and make sure that you don't have colliding dependencies and all kinds of stuff. As we move towards continuous value delivery, that starts to go away, because if you miss one release window, get it out whenever it's ready. And eventually we move beyond release windows entirely. We just say, once something's ready, get it out, put it out. We don't have to turn it on, but let's get it out into the world, and we can get some people playing with it. Even if it's just us internally, we can play with it in production. So now with things like progressive delivery and the concept of flow in our value streams, all of a sudden that risk, that stress, the complexity, the coordination required, the dependency challenges, the need for phased testing, all of this goes away, and you get closer to this ideal of kind of single piece flow where work is ready, it goes out. We get the feedback, we incorporate it into the next work, we get that out. And these are small, very low risk changes that just satisfy customers at a much higher rate and build confidence that we can learn as fast as we need to. We can deliver at whatever rate our customers are comfortable with. And we could probably do that for different cohorts of customers too. You could have some customers who are like, we really can only manage, change once a year. We have a big process here that we need to follow. And so having continuous feature releases isn't really something valuable to us. You could have them on a specific cohort. You could have others on a give it to us the moment it's ready, whether it's, half baked or not. And so we're moving in a direction of where everyone gets what they want at very low risk. We're learning as fast as possible, and we're able to adjust as we go.
Love it. So, but I thought this thing about Agile was gonna, I thought Agile was the savior of the world, right? Yeah, as soon as we're Agile, it's going to fix everything. And then, the release problem goes away and we're good, right?
Yeah, well, Agile did a pretty good job of solving its particular bottleneck, right? I mean, if we looked at the early days of moving from project to product, the problem was we just couldn't develop software fast enough. That was a major bottleneck. And so Agile did a fairly good job of like focusing attention there and alleviating that bottleneck. And then immediately the bottleneck moved to operations, which is what sparked DevOps, right? But I mean, Agile and DevOps they're just a reaction to waterfall, really, just saying we just want smaller waterfalls. We're not necessarily looking end to end within Agile or DevOps. The real opportunity here is in reimagining what it means to have value flow to customers, which means you have to look at the entire value stream. You have to start thinking in lean terms, in systematic terms, look at the big picture, all the things that are required, that entire spectrum, not just the Agile piece, the DevOps piece, not even necessarily the feature or the product piece, because there's a lot involved in value creation, right? You need mechanisms to process that customer feedback and incorporate it into the product. So we have to look end to end, starting with the customer and ending with the customer, and that's there's no real way to avoid that level of scope.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's this meant, from a release management perspective, project to product, and addressing the agile, the operations side? I mean, how is the world changing? And I'm curious from you, from the audience too. I'd love to see in the chat some of the issues and problems you're facing as you are reacting to the transitions. As you're coaching people. I mean, obviously now you're a value stream manager. How has your focus changed now? What is it that you're doing, because people are trying to get this? And maybe a better way of asking that is, so what are you commonly coaching release management about?
Yeah, this is a great and evolving area, because a lot of this is a new focus for folks. But I think one of the biggest pieces to consider is visibility, right? The ability to really see that big picture and understand it with a degree of clarity and confidence is the big missing piece that we're kind of transitioning into now. So we've had to kind of step back from our specific focus, whether that is, I'm an engineer, and so I care about the engineering portion of my product, to now realizing that we exist in a value stream network in our organization, but also the world, right? Because we're now utilizing a supply chain of open source components, vendor components.
Right.
We're consuming and producing, and we have streams that are feeding other streams, and things like platforms that are underlying a lot of different capabilities that are consumed by many different product teams in an organization. So you start to see this network, and having effective ways of seeing that and talking about it is really important, because it allows you to do that zoom out, zoom in, have productive conversations with all the folks in a given context. And then focus where you see a bottleneck, a constraint, an issue, an opportunity. So
Absolutely.
visibility and the ability to just zoom out and zoom in, whether that's with tooling, ideally with tooling, or just really effective mapping techniques, is where we're headed with this, because there's just too much to keep in anyone's brain.
Correct. Yeah, you will never get a change advisory board that's going to be good enough to see it all. They're just not enough to make it there. There's a couple of comments that are really good. Leslie says that all the processes in change management that haven't been matured really become visible as you ramp up release management. I'll just say, from both ends, it's like, oh, amen, brother. Because the operations side of the culture of the operations side so much wants to hold on to that, which is okay. That's where release management can start to have that impact of changing things, because unless you get there, you're not going to ever see success in your transformation. Sharif, well, any comments on that, Steve?
Oh, I just think that as we zoom out and we start to look at the bigger picture, you have to be confronted with the fact that those groups have separate incentives, right? The ops team is very much motivated by stability and avoiding change wherever possible. It just makes sense for them. And likewise with, PMO has their own motivations to push things forward, but also, hold tightly to the overall vision and make sure that it's being accomplished. And then you have change advisory, where they're trying to minimize change, but also they're stuck between product teams who want to do certain things autonomously and the PMO that has these large scale mandates. Balancing all of that and the ability to target these conversations and meet people where they're at, I think is kind of the art of release management, and making sure that folks everyone is happy and everyone is getting what they need, ultimately customers.
Absolutely. Sharif comments that in his organization, release management has been shelved totally, and people in those roles have been moved into other, delivery management or engineering management. I'm assuming some SRE in there, and that's a great step. But there's still more to be looking at, which presumably will be part of that delivery management role, which will kind of expand, which takes us into this discussion of really as we want to manage this process and improve this process, how do we actually manage this? And so Sharif, that is spot on. Like, how do we reimagine this? Release isn't just about getting things into production. It's much broader than that, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that one of the most important things that we can do at the current point in time is to reimagine what management means, because forever, since the inception of management has really been keeping an eye on everything. Yep. And making sure that everything goes to your plan, right? And that could be, your plan could be handed to you by your manager, but it was very much command and control. And what we're kind of encountering now is that we have technical capabilities that accomplish all of the management duties that we would traditionally perform as human beings to a much higher level of performance. And so the traditional understanding of management is no longer necessary in that role. And we can move management to this idea of coaching and enabling and unblocking. And I think that underpins a lot of the migration that we're seeing from the highest performing organizations are treating management differently. And they're leveraging management software and capabilities that provide automated capabilities that accomplish everything that we would do as humans before, right? And that's much better, because the level of complexity that we're dealing with means that we can't actually effectively manage it as humans if we're operating under that assumption that it's pay attention to everything, nudge everything in the right direction, mandate how things are done everywhere, and make sure that everything is to spec.
Precisely. There's another aspect of that too, which is the scope of, well, as soon as you're looking at being a coach to various teams, now it becomes different. Like, how much of the process are you a coach for? If it's a product team, how much of the process do they own? How does that play into this from managing releases?
I think that autonomy aspect is really important. When we talk about maximizing performance, what a lot of folks are thinking of is velocity, right? Going faster, which is really important because it means we learn faster and we're able to adjust faster. And what we're bumping into is that if the scope of your influence and autonomy doesn't extend throughout the entire value stream, then you can really only move as fast as the boundary where you get handed something from someone else, right? And where you hand things off to someone else, and then you have the opportunity to finger point. And so you have these gaps that could potentially widen, because handing work back and forth means that somebody has to be accountable at each stage with potentially different incentives. As we unify value streams and facilitate them with autonomous teams that can carry the work from start to finish, process that feedback and adjust, that means that you optimize your ability for flow and then value delivery.
Precisely. Well put. Lots of comments. There's lots of comments. We have a lot of content to cover. Well, and here's the problem then. as we're looking at managing the software delivery, the value streams, the releases, there's still going to be a lot of steps. So, one, why are there so many steps? And two, what are we going to do about that?
Yeah, the growth of complexity is really interesting, and it's because we're getting better, right? We have far more capability now than back in the day when I was shipping software. It was very simple software. We were leveraging kind of monolithic tooling and libraries to deliver that software. So we had very few components. But now, we've evolved the ecosystem, we've evolved capabilities, and there's a lot more specialization, right? You have something that does one extremely specific thing super well, and it's differentiating itself from competition, which means then you just have this giant collection of highly specialized, highly capable tools that need to play nice together. They need to integrate. You need to be able to hand work or have work ideally flow between them, and not manage that manually, because this is just exploding and it's not going anywhere anytime soon, right? I mean, we have consolidation, but even within that consolidation of a single vendor, those separate components stay isolated, because everyone knows a monolith isn't really sustainable. It's very challenging. So I don't think we're headed towards less complexity anytime soon. We are headed towards a higher capability of managing that. And that comes from automation. There is no way that humans are going to be able to juggle all of this. And so we do really need highly capable tools.
Yeah. I think another way of putting what you just said, well, you put it very eloquently, but it's like, get really comfortable with the lots of steps. Don't be shy. It's okay. But you'll need better tools to manage them, and that's where you'll feel better. And if you're expecting less steps or less parts in the process, yeah, there's probably going to be more. And it's kind of an issue, because as you look out, as this expands, as you look out across the value cycle itself, it becomes harder.
Well, yeah, because we don't just have more tools. We have more specialized roles. We have new roles all the time. I mean, we're just starting to get into the value stream world. And we're seeing in the value stream world, there's a half dozen discrete roles that didn't exist like before. And they're going to be added to the mix. And we have, the same specialization that we're seeing with tooling, we also see with roles, because the specialization of those capabilities is very important, right? The thing that these people and tools are delivering has to become more sophisticated over time. And so we really just have to effectively manage this scenario. And with humans, it gets a lot more challenging, because you can't just count on the fact that we're going to use API calls to pass information from one person to the next. Right. You've got conversations, you've got meetings, you've got collaborative workspaces, you've got Jira tickets, and that gets a lot harder.
It does. Well, in fact, I love this slide that we put together. It's like a typical day in real life. This is what release managements look like until now. Sterling comments, in our organization, the biggest issues we see is in release management is that not all of our customers follow the same release management lifecycle. Causes major issues and confusion. So I'll let you go with that one. I mean, I so empathize with that, because this is what we talk to every day with all of our customers, as a vendor. It's like, yes, and let me show you how to do that.
Yeah, I think that is a major challenge, and it really can only be accomplished by tooling support, right? I mean, you can't have, we know that things like long running branches to keep code separate, so that you have one for every 6 months to the customers who want that cadence, and you're cutting releases on a weekly basis to the folks who want the bleeding edge. You really need to be just putting all that out into production, keeping it switched off for certain folks and on for others. And we've come a long way in that realm. Like the idea of progressive delivery didn't exist 5 years ago, as far as I know. And so we have capabilities to address that, but the future is not evenly distributed. And
Right.
adopting that tooling and getting it right is a new capability for organizations that needs to be supported by someone who knows how to do that and is empowered to really create something that works in the context of the organization, right? You've got to fit in progressive delivery into your whatever mix of culture and behaviors and practices you already have, which usually requires a mindset shift, buy-in, perhaps training for folks. It is not trivial at all.
Not at all. And, there'd be a tendency to say, well, I'm in charge of the control of making sure that things go through the process. So you guys that are trying to be out there in the front end, I can't let you go, because you're not following the process, even though because they may be, they're likely, in fact, being more progressive, more automated, and probably have a higher quality. They really ought to do better. But it sort of flies in the face of what would be traditional thinking. And there's a mental change that needs to happen. But it makes life harder in a manual word for release management to know how to handle that. And I think this is funny. You coined the term, death by 1,000 shoulder taps. These are, just some of the things you would see. We better move along, though. We have a poll. And I wanted to kind of get a sense from folks here about what kinds of things you're seeing in release management.
Yeah. So the polling question should be up on your screen. The question is, what problems do you see in release management? And you can use multiple responses with this one. So you can choose from scope creep, last minute changes, late deliverables, managing dependencies between teams, or other. And if you choose other, just let us know in your comments in the chat box, and we'll take a look at those. Jeff, you want me to keep this poll open for a little bit, let you guys continue your conversation?
You bet. That'd be perfect.
All right. You bet.
I gotta say, just for the record, death by 1,000 shoulder taps. The first time I heard of it, it's not mine, but the first time I think I heard of it was a good friend of mine, Jackie, in the DevOps Toronto community. She used it in a presentation at DevOps Days to talk about ops and dealing with just the challenges that folks have to deal with being in the middle of a bunch of different people doing different types of work. And I think that fits very well with release management.
It does, because the only way you're going to be successful is by satisfying the ops side and proving that you've got it so that they can trust, and then engage in the various teams, which kind of takes us to the core problems. And what is it that's holding us back, Steve? What problems do we need to address?
Yeah, well, there is no shortage, of course. I think that one of the things that that's going to keep coming up for us is this challenge of visibility, right? I mean, when you have many moving pieces and you have this big picture view that you have to keep available, right? People have to be able to see the big picture and then zoom in where it matters. We cannot do that as individuals. We also can't do it without tooling support. We need integrated data. We need dashboard views. We need different views for different roles as well, right? Because we don't have single personas inside of organizations, right? The executives care about different things than the individual contributors, but they all need to be working off of the same data source so that you have some form of truth to reference. And so having kind of a unified plane that can show you how work is flowing through the organization and out to customers is really going to bridge the gap between uh, running around and trying to figure everything out on a ever more rapid basis or ever more frequent basis, because we just can't afford to do it if we're releasing software continuously, if we're constantly putting out new changes.
Yeah, I like that. The context or the content from this slide actually came from Forrester in their very first definition of value stream management, which is interesting because in essence, it's kind of the same problems we're talking about here. And the visibility comes as the core, the source of the issues, if you will. Everyone has a desire to say, just follow the same process for everyone and you'll be fine. But that's not what's happening with project to product. With autonomy, people want their own tools, their own methodology, their own level of how far they've adopted on the Agile and DevOps curve and how that's going for them. And ultimately are looking for a system in place for continuous improvement. How do they know if they're doing better? Funny enough, if you think of literally the billions that have been spent on tooling, we still most organizations can't answer the most fundamental question. Hey, they'll pitch a tool or a process and say, we're going to do better. Well, did you? Don't know.
Right.
How do you do that? And so for sure, there's going to be some executive fatigue. So the source of the problems to address are these, because as you do them, you get better at everything. But you have to look at the whole process. You get comfortable looking at each team individually, but you cannot do that manually. That's the point. So a simplified value cycle. What does that mean? What's it mean to have a simplified value cycle?
I think that, in the term, what really stands out to me is, first of all, value, right? I mean, you need feedback in order to understand value. You need to be focused on customers as well. And so that's the first shift to moving towards a simplified value cycle is even just establishing the concept of value and making sure that you kind of understand it, which means you've got to be connected to customers somehow. You have to have some visibility into what your customers think or do with your what the work you're putting out. And then the cycle is really making sure that gets connected to action and change, right? You've got to take that feedback from customers and incorporate it into what you do next. And we really can't do this effectively as humans unless this is simplified, unless there's something that is taking all the complexity away and giving us clear signal and visibility into how all of this is coming together, where the biggest constraints are, right? Where are we slowing down? Where are we seeing quality issues? What's failing on a regular basis? And where we don't have things plugged in so that there's a smooth transition through the cycle. All of that needs to come together, and you really need unified tooling, ideally that kind of sits atop this value cycle and brings all those pieces into a cohesive whole.
Precisely. Couldn't have put it better. I will talk then to the analysts, because they're always fun to listen to, the ivory towers in the sky, but this is not just what we're saying. This is what the industry is saying. I love this graphic, actually, that we'd put together from discussions with Gartner about where value stream management platforms and value stream management fits in, because solving this problem is key. We're not going to get better as an industry until we start focusing on flow. And as soon as we start focusing on flow and measuring the results of the changes and the impacts we're having, a tree's going to fall in the forest. No one's going to hear it. We might get better. No one will know. We can't prove that we're doing better. So what's the point? Why are we not changing the culture to be more indicative of experimentation and trialing it. Gartner predicts that by 2023, 70% of organizations will use value stream management to improve flow in their DevOps pipeline. Question is, where are you in this journey, and how's it coming for you as an organization? I'm assuming, Steve, this has some influence on why you went from release management to becoming the value stream guy. Is that accurate?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when so the motivation for me to move into value streams was looking back throughout my career and seeing that, all of the challenges that I had and the biggest opportunities where I saw the biggest return on investment, where we were able to make the biggest impact, was when we stepped back, looked at the entire end-to-end flow of activity, measured it in some way, and we've come a long way in our capabilities to do that, and then produced something that everybody could see and act upon, or even just talk about. So the value stream and value stream management really provide a capability to spread that through the entire organization, and then take us from every team is doing something different and we really don't understand what's working and what's not, to having the best performing operating models become the new sane defaults that everybody can follow. But go off and experiment on your own, but we know this works, right? We know this will pay off. If you want to follow this example, go ahead. We can make that accessible to folks, but feel free to experiment, and then the rising tide will raise all boats.
Absolutely. On the poll, just going back to that, we asked, what problems do you see in release management? 15% said scope creep, 4% were other, but the big ones were about a third said last minute changes. Oh my gosh, I wonder if a last minute change has been a cause of incidences in production. Late deliverables. Hey, this thing's coming in late. What is that? Okay, can we slide the release? What are we doing about it? Or I know there's other things with it. Well, that then points to the other big one, which is managing dependencies between teams. This team's going to have to pull from on this date release, but there's a dependency downstream. What do we do about it? Good luck.
Yeah. I mean, what this is telling me when I look at this is I see late deliverables and last minute changes trickling down from managing dependencies, because if you have tight coupling in your organization, if you have dependencies that you cannot break, that are very challenging to manage, and the ability of those dependencies to kind of collaborate and synchronize themselves is limited, then you will have infrequent releases, right? You're not going to want to deal with that situation constantly. You might not even be able to deal with that situation on a frequent enough basis without just running around constantly. So what happens is you create larger batches, which means, okay, we're going to figure out all the dependencies at once every 3 months, and then we'll ship, or every 6 months. We're going to have this giant convergence of everything. We'll mash it all together. We'll figure it out over, 3 weeks of absolute pain, and then we'll be done for another 2.5 months and do it again. And that means that you have this release window that people are going to try and cram themselves into because they can't wait another 3 months. And you'll also have last minute changes with it, like, wait a second, before this goes out, and then we wait for the next window. And because the deadline means people are going to be late, right? Being late matters. So as we shrink the release window, as we release more often, it forces us to manage these dependencies in more effective ways. But the benefits you get is you avoid things like scope creep, last minute changes, and late deliverables.
Yeah, we even had we have a customer actually that as part of they're very heavy on the scaled Agile side. used data from Platora to demonstrate what the correlation was to late-breaking changes to incidences in production, which then drove a process change to say, look, we're going to scope lock earlier and have a process, basically just managing the exceptions. Is everybody on time? Are they really on time? Is it all good? Great. Otherwise, you kick to the next train that's going, and because they're using tooling, they could manage more trains of more styles and accommodate more people. So it wasn't that big of a deal. They could do it more frequently because they could manage by exception. Without data, you really don't have, you don't have visibility, which kind of takes us to, well, okay, so get visibility. Do you want to talk about some of the benefits of having visibility?
Well, I think, to respond to the poll challenge and what we're talking about in terms of like frequency of releases and the cost of going slower, then if we don't have visibility into the cost, we don't really have an understanding of what are the effects of going slow and releasing less frequently, then you're not really going to have the motivation to change. You're not going to really have the supporting information that's going to drive that decision to release more often. You also have to have visibility into what effect is this going to have for our customers, right? It's part of that visibility is visibility into feedback of like, what do our customers really want? What can they tolerate? But even without that, I mean, we know that we can, with progressive delivery, we can be shipping software to production turned off for however long, right? It doesn't matter how often it goes to our customers. What matters is that it gets out into the world, and you don't batch these things up and then have to deal with a giant repercussion from a giant explosion, a giant explosion of feedback. But yeah, so being able to see things like metrics, dependencies, performance, and how much work and the profile of that work, right? The different types of work that are going through the value stream allows us to really tune how best to get that work out to customers, and how best to avoid the pain and the cost of things like dependencies, and the interactions across teams, because a lot of us we're still not stream aligned, and we have to deal with the reality of handing work back and forth. And so seeing the cost of that is going to help us move in a direction of more flow and more autonomy if we can demonstrate it effectively to the business who ultimately makes those decisions.
Right. The other side that is a byproduct of greater visibility is the trust that's built in the organization. When most of our, Platora, I'm a value stream management platform vendor, right? So we help provide this visibility. Think of the operations side and the cab experience, and compare the two. Cab, a few days before release, they're checking, or a week before the release, they're checking things out. That's the first time they've seen stuff. Versus value stream management and release management that has complete visibility. It already has all the things in the checklists and things that are worried about from a cab perspective, and can audit and verify that things have been done. Which one's more trustworthy? And then once that's in place, you're almost at a point of like, do you need cab anymore? It's already being handled by people managing software delivery, and it's pushed down to each team. And the people that are driving it can be those very same release managers that have been spending their time running around asking people. No, now they're coaches to various teams saying, look, I'm going to help you through this process. But in order to make that happen, we have to talk about, somehow mixing all the activities that are going on. Seamlessly mix human and automated activities. What does that mean?
Well, we're not getting rid of the human aspect of software development and delivery anytime soon, right? I mean, we're shifting towards, as you say, more coaching, more creativity, more of the human than ever before. And we're handing off what can be automated to automation.
Right.
And that's a wonderful thing. I think it's beautiful that we're actually becoming more human all the time in our work. We're able to bring more humanity to what we're doing. That requires automation. It requires the support of tooling in order to allow us to hand those things off that are better accomplished by platforms and tooling, so that we can really focus on collaborating the most effective way, enjoying our jobs more, not carrying risk and complexity around in our heads all the time, which stresses us out, and we don't do well trying to do things that are better accomplished with automation. So I'm really excited about the next stage of what we can unlock with things like value stream management to just enable humanity to be the best version of itself.
Well, that's exactly right, which gets us started with value stream management. And there's a process here. We're running a little short on time. I'm gonna, there's a whole value stream management consortium that we both participate in. If you want to learn about getting started with value stream management, please, there's a foundation course. There's an ebook on this webinar about the evolution of release management and how to, in essence, transform. How do you transform the organization? If you already have gotten rid of release management and you've got software delivery managers, by all means, take a look at the same. It's the same process. Somebody's got to do this stuff, and there's a lot of material growing on it. I want to talk, though, about the organizational side. There's an implication here that the organization will be different. So what is the organizational impact of this?
Yeah, we kind of alluded to this earlier on in the presentation when we talked about value stream networks, and the change for organizations to move from command and control towards autonomy, right? And autonomy really means that you've got fewer dependencies that are kind of hard dependencies. You get soft dependencies where you have things are consumed by teams provided by other teams. You have platforms that are kind of enabling things. But we're going to start to see every team in an organization aligned to a specific value stream with a specific customer, whether or not they're internal or external customers or partners of the organization. When you have a customer and you work backwards from that customer, what you get is value streams, and you get the creation of a network where each of these streams is interacting and providing or consuming capabilities across the network. And that just means you can move faster, right? You don't have to go up and over and around. You don't have to navigate the organization in the same way. You don't have to go as a release manager, run around and talk to a million different people in different departments in order to get things done. And so we'll see that just out of necessity, right? We need to have more flow, and that is going to change how we organize inside of organizations.
That's precisely right. There's a change in, if you're a traditional release management as well, on what that role will look like. Just a note there, like another one of our customers got a promotion as a release management organization. That seems asinine to me, but the CIO is like, oh my gosh, you've done phenomenal. Why? Because they changed the organization from being a gatekeeper and let me slow you down because you're not following the process to, hey, I'm going to help you go faster. Do these things, automate more. Here's the steps where you're slow. Here's the data you need to make better decisions. This is the power that you have. And it's lacking so much. Wow, we are really running out of time. You'll find a lot more about this. You can always catch us online. Let me give you a little bit about Platora and why we're here. We're talking about the transformation of release management and being more value stream oriented. Platora, we're a provider of a bunch of tools, and it's part of a platform and a suite of tools. one of the management and workflow areas that we have is about release management and orchestration. How do you manage all these autonomous teams, and how do you help them be better? Use a tool. It's not that hard. It's not about making sure that deployments are on a particular time, but it's being able to puppeteer the mix of human and automated activities that are all part of that. So you have to know calendar schedules. You have to have the data of who's releasing when, what's the scope. You've got to be able to manage the various projects and interdependencies that you cannot simply do manually. By putting all this in a tool, it's the game changer, because then it frees up your time to manage by exception. And that's the goal. Now, all of this is part of a bigger platform that is a value stream management platform. The essence is that there's a bottom layer that pulls and ingests data from across the tool chain. And then there's a management and workflow, of which the release management orchestration is part of. Now, there's more to our platform of managing environments, of managing the deployment and cutover, managing the planning side, and some of the flow metrics come out of that. And all of that data then is transformed into a data warehouse where you can get analytics anywhere with an enterprise analytics engine, allowing you to slice and dice any way you want and get data cuts however you'd like it. We have a bunch of out-of-box analytics and dashboards and so forth. But, at the end of the day, the point is to get visibility and have it just come naturally without anybody doing work, without anybody having to go ask and another shoulder tap. And so that you can start to get things like, well, who's late? Who doesn't, who is saying that what is the impact if somebody wants to go late? Is that okay? Is it okay to release over Christmas? Is there a way that I can block that out? How do I manage individual teams that are, with different steps and optimize for the ones that are more automated? This is what we're talking about. Once there, you'll get complete visibility for a global calendar. You can have schedules of various types of releases, even on the releases, to get some interesting visuals where the data exists. They just don't have it correlated like this. The bottom right is a impact matrix. Hey, for a given release, where's my biggest impact, where I've got a whole bunch of different teams climbing onto the same application for a release? That's probably where I should focus my time. That's the key of the labor that needs to happen. Ultimately, what's the impact of doing all of this? Well, this is it. This is actual customer results of imagine this in your organization, doubling the number of features that you deliver. Same team, but when you root out the efficiency, it's massive. Now you can do that while reducing incidences in production. This seems crazy. How is that possible? Yes, you get rid of, you focus on the efficiency and make your factory better. The most interesting part of this chart for this particular customer was they only increased the number of changes delivered to production by 15%. Reaching out and touching production, it's not like they, their deployment frequency increased that much into production. Just the amount of stuff that they put on that pipe, dramatically different. That's the story. That's what gets people promoted. Just 1 minute on key takeaways, and I think we have to turn it over to Charlene. Steve, give us the takeaways here.
Yeah, I think, in 2021, we're not seeing a trend in the opposite direction for delivering more value, right? We always have to be delivering more value. Competition and what customers demand is always going to increase. And that is, our abilities and our capabilities have changed the way that we have to think about release management, but also what we can think about when we think about release management, right? We have the ability to see this very differently now, supported by tooling, supported by platforms, and focusing more on what humans do extremely well. And value stream management is filling that gap between the complexity we need to manage, the visibility we need into coordinating all of this work and getting positive results. And the solutions are there, and they're just getting better.
Yep. With that, we'll turn it over to you, Charlene.
All right. Thanks very much. Guys, thank you so much for the comments that came in and the questions that came in that were addressed during the presentation. Good stuff all the way around. I love to see the engagement with the audience. So thank you to everybody who did send over comments and questions and things like that. Just a quick reminder that today's event has been recorded. So if you missed any or all of it, you will have the opportunity to access it later. We will be sending out an email that contains a link to access the webinar on demand, so you can always view it at your pleasure. The webinar is also going to be living on the DevOps.com website, so you can always go look for it there. Just go to DevOps.com/webinars, look in the on-demand section. It should be sitting right there waiting for you. All right, before we close things out, our Amazon gift card winners today are Sean F., Molly P., Alexander Z., and Adam K. Congratulations to all four of you. We'll be reaching out to you via email to get your Amazon gift card over to you, so please check your inbox, and if you don't see anything there, please check your spam folder. I know I'm screaming through this, but Jeff and Steve, thank you guys for such a great presentation. Lots of great information, and folks seem to love it based on the chat. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Reach
folks.
out on LinkedIn. We'd love to help you through this.
All right.
Yeah.
And also want to thank the audience for joining me today. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm late, and I'm signing off. I'll talk to you later. Enjoy your day, and please stay safe.
Thank you.